Hey everybody, welcome back to another Mysidia Post video. My name is Alex Scott.
I'm Travis Pfeifer, man. Is it cold in here? Because I feel a chill.
Well, we are going to be talking about the ice cards for Opus XI, so that's probably what you're feeling.
It is.
Yes, we really did just start off the episode that way. So we are filming these all back to back, so it's going to be pretty intense. Our wit is going to be at its end. So let's just get into this one. The first card is Olace, which is the Final Fantasy 15 card. He's a 4-cost ice backup, and his job is Emperor. He is an EX burst. I have no idea why he's an EX burst, but he is. When Olace enters the field, choose one ice character in your break zone, add it to your hand. This is similar to Opus I Sage that is seeing a lot of play more recently, to just because obviously what's important in FFTCG is playing the same good cards over and over again. So things that recur are important, and Olace has an EX burst, which is, again, baffling to me.
Yeah, he's just great. This is one of the few cards that didn't get spoiled for me, and I just saw him when all the cards got released. I was like, whoa, that's going in all my ice decks. Like, yeah, he's great. If you didn't want the 6 characters for like lock, you could argue, just run this over the Setzer. But yeah, just wow, it's so straightforward, but so strong too. Really like his artwork. He kind of looks like Ian McKellen as Gandalf, which is really cool. But yeah, just super strong, super strong.
Yeah, I think that Mono Ice, this is an auto include. If you have an Ice X deck, this is still an auto include, and I think that we're going to just start seeing this all over the place. Okay, we've got another 15 card coming up.
Yeah, 15 got a lot of love this set, which made me very happy. This is Versatile, or Versatile, I'm not sure. He's the research chief. He is a forward from 15, a 5-cost, 5k forward. Only 5k on a 5-cost? Well, let's find out why. When Versatile enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Add up to 3 characters of cost 5 or more among them to your hand, and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. Say what?
It's pretty good.
I mean, yeah, obviously, if you're assuming best case scenario, you hit all 3, you basically just earned a CP back off of him. And I mean, the first thing I thought of was Rampier, because that deck plays so many high-costed cards between the Fusoya and the Kane and the Shantoto. So a deck like that, it's not unreasonable that you could hit all 3 of these. But honestly, even if you just hit one of them, like, I think that alone would basically make him worth bringing down, because he's still a body. But if you hit 2 or 3, like, you're just cooking with gas at that point. You're just rolling. Wow, yeah, that's really strong.
Yeah, and it's so important that it says the characters have cost 5, because if it was forwards or backups, then it would be terrible. Like, it has to be, because it's not going to be a given that you hit 3 with this. Not at all. So that's very important. Now, here's one thing that we might find out from playing him, is that if you're grabbing all these 5 costs or higher, you might end up discarding them all to play one of the other ones. Like, it's because you're investing a lot in him, and then you're going to have to invest in one of the expensive forwards you just grabbed or backups, and all of a sudden you might find yourself pitching cards that you want to keep. So I wonder if that will be a concern or not. I think that this card is pretty neat, though. I think it's really good.
I think in a non-Rampier world, your concern makes sense, but in a deck that exists that can just poop out these high-level forwards for free, I don't think you're worried about that. And again, you can run this, whether it's Mono Ice, the Rampier, run this with Earth, run this with Star Sybil. Oh, okay, cool. Now I'll just crack and boom, put this free forward out. So yeah, maybe I'm overhyping him a bit. Like, maybe he won't be as good he reads that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be wild. That's actually a really good synergy, too, with Star Sybil. If you crack Star Sybil to play this guy, then, that feels really good, too. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of this guy in the coming months.
Absolutely.
Oh,
it's your boy!
Here comes Amaro. So this is one of my favorite cards, and I just had this connection with him because when I was a kid and I was playing Final Fantasy VI, and I didn't even do it the first time. It was my older brother that unlocked Amaro as a character, and I'm like, there's a Yeti, and it was just like always this weird thing that, like, I can't. It's just something from my childhood that I love, and I always love Amaro. And I tried to play the 6 CP version, and it didn't go so well. This one is a lot better. So this is our first Ice Legend. He is a 7 cost, 9k forward, category 6 job Yeti. If you control a card name, Mog 6, the cost for playing Amaro onto the field is reduced by 2. When Amaro enters the field, choose one forward your opponent controls, put it at the bottom of its owner's deck. At the end of each of your turns, choose one forward your opponent controls and freeze it. So this is something that in Magic the Gathering, I've been told by my friend Yuda, is called a tuck effect. So you're tucking the card at the bottom of their deck. And this is the first time we're having this in Final Fantasy trading card game, and it's nice because it's only going to trigger abilities of forwards that say leave the field or when they're targeted. So things won't be going to the break zone. So it's kind of like this softer removal that won't set off as many things and will make it harder for people to get the cards that they like if you remove something good with this. And for that reason, I think that this is already going to be okay at 7 cost. At the end of each of your turns, choose one forward, freeze it. That's actually pretty good too, and that's going to be happening every turn. And the reason that I'm saying that we're going to have to play it for 7 is that I'm not 100% convinced that you're going to want to play Mog 6 because we only have 2 versions of it. There is no new Mog 6 printed, and neither of them are particularly easy to play out with this card. That doesn't mean I'm not going to try it. It just means that it will be it's not an easy thing to set up.
There was so much 6 love in this set. I mean, most of the characters in 6 got a new card. Why is there no Mog in this? That makes no sense. Like, Square, in the future, it's like the Lightning from last Opus, that there was no Odin with it. If you're going to put a card that has a synergy with a very specific card, you need to release a new version for that set. So that way, if anyone is playing Sealed or Draft or whatever, like, it's included. And again, like, if he was the one random 6 character, maybe I could see it. But you put all the other 6 characters in. Why did you leave Mog out? That just makes no sense. So anyway, but ultimately the good news is I don't think that's really relevant. Like, that's kind of like the bonus if you can get him out. But such a cool effect, something we haven't seen before. Nice to have that Magic reference. But yeah, you just whoop right to the bottom of their deck. If they don't have a deck that can like search or pull something out, you've just removed that forward. That forward's basically gone for the rest of the game. And I love the fact that he freezes something just by existing. So it doesn't matter if he's dull or if he's active or whatever his state is. Like, doesn't matter. You're just getting a frozen forward. And it's nice to see an Amaro that doesn't have to attack you every turn. I know that like fit his theme, but yeah, he's really cool. I love the artwork a lot. I'm happy for Alex because I know how much he likes this character. And yeah, finally, I feel like we got an Amaro that's like, I want to play this.
Yeah, and you know what? See you later, Fel Thanos. Okay, what's next?
All right. Speaking of big ice boys, next we have Orphan. Job Val C, 5 cost forward of 9k power from Final Fantasy 13. When Orphan enters the field or at the beginning of the attack phase, during each of your turns, choose up to 2 forwards or monsters opponent controls. Place 1 Doom counter on them. Then break all characters with 3 or more Doom counters placed on them. So, assuming he doesn't die on entry, turn 1, Orphan is going to get you 2 Doom counters because it'll be when he enters, and then, assuming you played him in main phase, which, why wouldn't you? Main phase 1 attack phase. So it means the second your next attack phase starts, again, you're going to break possibly up to two cards. With on top of that, he's on curve, being 5 cost and 9k. Yeah, really, everything about this card reads solid. I think really the only question even surrounding this guy is, what do you play, this Orphan or the other Orphan? The other Orphan's definitely tuned more for mono ice. This one you could slot into anything, really, because yeah, nothing about him says I have to be played with ice, other than his element. And those Doom counters just seem really strong, particularly the fact that it's because he hits 2 for me. If he only targeted 1, then I don't know if that would be how good that would be. And the fact that, again, if you play him in main phase 1, you're going to at least trigger 2 right off the start, whereas if you didn't, wait until later, you're only triggering 1. I see this card being a huge pain to deal with, but maybe I'm wrong. I've thought that about cards before that read this well, and then it's like, oh, actually, no, it's just the Doom counters never ended up mattering, or something else happened, or whatever. So that I'm just not sure, but he reads really strong.
Yeah, he's got to survive that first turn, or you've got to flash him. So that's like the one window of opportunity that you have to get him. And I think that there's plenty of chance that he does survive a turn, and that you can kind of like if you get the first one off, that's pretty unreal. And then it's just gravy after that. Like it's all good. So I think we'll see a lot of trial with this guy.
Yeah, he's 1 CP cheaper than the other one, which is 6. And I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, with Renoa or Unai or with this guy, I mean, that's a lot of setup. Yeah, you're basically going to kill possibly 2 things in 1 turn, so that's very strong.
Yeah, oh yeah. Next, we have Gestalian Empire Sid. What an unfortunate name for this guy to have. He has found the world's largest avocado, and he has cut it open, and he's ready to eat it, and I love that. I think that's great.
This artwork.
So he's a 2 CP Ice backup job engineer, which I hope is a thing one day. I think that'd be kind of cool. And he is category 6, which would be relevant if his name was in Gestalian Emperor Sid. He has a doll, choose 1 monster you control, select 1 counter placed on it, and place an additional counter of the same type as the selected counter on that monster. This is a really neat ability. I think it's so cool they printed this, and I love the idea of doing this. The issue is that it's an ice, so obviously this is really good to accelerate the ice monster that we're going to look at in a minute, but as soon as you put this in a dual color deck, you're playing less of those different elements, so it's harder to put counters on those monsters. So it's basically is 1 CP worth a counter, and is it fast enough if you do it in dual colors to take advantage of some of the other better monsters with counters, or is this supposed to be a mono ice card that uses the counter system? I don't know. Overall, it's just a really neat design space, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, Gestalian Empire Sid, or Banana Sid as he's more affectionately referred to, is the de facto searcher in a Final Fantasy VI deck. So he's definitely going to clash with that. And yeah, you pretty much said all of this. I don't know, are these monster counters even going to be a big thing? If they are, this guy could be really fun. But if not, then he's just going to be sitting there. But yes, his avocado opening artwork is something to behold.
Oh, big time. Okay, how about the next card?
All right, next we have Qaddafi, a remnant from Final Fantasy VII. 4 cost, 6k forward, EX burst. When Qaddafi enters the field, you may search for 1 job remnant other than card name Qaddafi and add it to your hand. When Qaddafi or job remnant enters your field, choose 1 character opponent controls. Freeze it. Obviously, he plays well specifically with the other remnants. You want to use him if you're using the remnant package. If not, you probably don't want to use him at all. What's nice is, so he's going to freeze a character on entry. That's solid. Celis does that as well, the Legend Celis from Opus 4. And if any of the other job remnants enter, they're freezing a character. And character, of course, can include your backup, so that's quite strong. And then he searches 1. So yeah, if you're running that remnant package, he seems really solid. If you're not, then run the Dark Qaddafi.
If you get this in limited or sealed or whatever, this is going to be really big, because you're going to be able to close out a game really quickly with this. I love this card. I haven't convinced myself that it's going to be meta yet, but it's one of those cards that I read and I say to myself, well, I'm going to try this for sure. Like I'm going to attempt to play this. The biggest hang up I have is that the Dark Qaddafi is so good. And that's a discussion for another video. But
we'll get there. Coming for him.
It's a clash for sure. So I'll be trying this. I love freezing backups and watching my opponent squirm. So we'll see if that's something that we can do with this guy. Okay, Final Fantasy IV card. It's Edward. He is Job King, which is hella relevant now because we have a searcher. So his text reads, during your opponent's attack phase, so specific, when a forward you control is put into the from the field to the break zone, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. As with any Edward card, this is reduced by 2 by Harley, so it could be a 2 CP backup, which is kind of neat. This is interesting. It really makes your opponent reluctant to trade with you because you can block and get a discard off of it, which is a very powerful effect. Galdes is good because of that, and it adds it to all of your forwards. If you play like Ice Water and Famfrit your own guys during their attack phase, That's pretty neat too. So I like that application of it as well. But in Ice Water, you also want to run 4-cost Snow. So all of a sudden, you're packing in a lot of high-cost backups. So I'm not 100% sure where this is going to fit, but we'll find a place for it.
Originally, I didn't like this, but the more I think about it, the more I wonder. I really like the Bard Edward in Ice that lets you discard and has the Silent Verse special, which lets you cancel any summon. That just feels like such a staple of Ice. And the problem is because it limits it to the attack phase. So assuming your opponent has the answers, they're just, okay, I'm just going to take you out in the main phases then. I'll hit you with summons or Phenib or whatever they've got.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody
Stop
that.
giving away the secret.
Right, let them know, let them think it's just any time their opponent. But in theory, I could also see a deck where maybe you have a bunch of little guys that you want to go to the break. So little things like Porum or just other tiny cards that you literally are just there to chump block and make them discard constantly. So in that sense, I could see it being very degenerate. And this would go great with that Harley because you can put him down for 2. So I don't know if he'll be a staple, especially compared to the other backup Edward. But I think in the right deck, he could be pretty brutal.
Yeah, I think so. And just doing a quick search here, we're very close to being able to get our Opus XI Rydia online in Ice Earth to start searching things like Zalira. So I think that Edward and Harley, I think those are going to be important cards to be playing in 4-base decks. So we'll definitely see a lot of people experimenting with 4 decks this set for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got our first ice monster.
All right. I'm going to call this what I've always called it ever since I've seen it in Final Fantasy, because I don't honestly know how it's pronounced, but I've always called it Curl. So this is a 3 CP, 7K monster, Curl. Really like the artwork. The colors on it are beautiful. And it's from 10. During your turn, Curl also becomes a forward with 7,000 power. You can pay an ice, discard Curl, and remove a backup from the game. Choose a dull forward, deal it 8,000 damage, and you can only use this ability if Curl is in your hand. Like the Goblin from Fire, this is the ice version of this type of monster. And same with those, I don't really know until I see them, but it's just hard. Again, same thing I'll say about that one is that it just feels like so much setup for just not much of an effect. Only a forward on your turn. We saw that didn't really go over well in Opus 9. It's still paying an element, discarding it, removing a backup. And because this is ice in this case, it has to be a dull forward. So, yeah, I don't know. I like the artwork, but I'm not sold on these monsters.
Yeah, and so far the 2 elements that we've talked about are already proficient at removing their own backups, so that they don't need this at all.
100%.
Okay, we've got Chronos, which is a 2 CP FFL backup job mage. When Chronos enters the field, each player who doesn't control 2 or more forwards discards 1 from their hand. So could this be part of a aggro ice deck? I think that's kind of neat. And then 2 ice doll put Chronos into the break zone. Your opponent selects 1 active character they control and dulls it. So that's kind of like a Garland-like effect, but it's way too expensive, and I really don't think that's reliable to ever be used. If they have a backup up, they're not going to probably be too concerned about dulling it, and it's going to be really tough to use that reliably. But the first effect in a really aggressive deck, that is pretty sweet, to play a 2 CP backup and make your opponent discard. That's not bad.
Yeah, you probably would never drop this unless you know that effect is going to go off and hit them and not yourself. At first I thought that action ability was absolutely terrible, and I still don't think it's very good, but I think the key part of it is because your opponent selects. So because of that, even if they respond to it with a trigger, they still have to. So as long as they have 1 single active character, they're going to have to dull it. But honestly, for 2 ice and tapping her and breaking her, the fact that it doesn't dull freeze, it's just a dull, I don't know, that doesn't seem like enough. So.
Okay. Oh, I love this next card, both in art and in effects. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, this is Black Waltz III from Final Fantasy IX. He is a black mage, forward, 2 cost, 3k power. And this card is just crazy. When Black Waltz III is put from the field into the break zone, select 1 of the following 3 actions. Your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. You choose 1 dull forward, deal it 7,000 damage. choose one ice summon in your break zone, add it to your hand. Whew, that is really strong for 2 CP. Like a 2 CP, I mean, this thing basically is Glaciabolus, except it's on the body, which is crazy. It's got the discard. And at first, I didn't think much of that dull effect, except because of the way combat works, unless they have Brave, when they swing, they're going to be dull. So you can block their forward and then deal it set. So he can trade to a 10K. That's really good for a 2 CP. The discard alone, I mean, that effect. And then, yeah, recurring an ice summon. Like, I'm definitely going to try this guy out in mono ice. He seems really strong. In particular, it's nice to see an ice card that isn't so based heavily on an ETB, that he's got some defensive capabilities. It's like, you don't want to trade with this thing because you're going to lose a really big ice. But all 3 of his effects are great. He's cheap. I don't know how much the category is relevant because 9 doesn't play a lot with ice right now, but maybe in the future it could be great. And, this is one of the greatest scenes in 9, the artwork that it's from. So excellent work.
Yeah, so there's going to be very few circumstances where you don't get your return on CP on this guy. Whether it's the removal, the discard, or the recursion, you're going to get some CP back in some form, which is really nice. The one thing you can do with this, if you're running this and you're running Kuja in some form in ice, then your 3 CP Light Zidane can be a 2 CP forward, which is kind of nice. So that's one kind of niche application. People used to do that with Ice Kuja all the time, but now there's so many Light and Dark cards that it's not as popular a move to do. Overall, just a super powerful card and possibly a precursor into us getting into more aggressive ice decks once again.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got Black Mage. I love this card. It's a crazy standard unit backup. I wasn't expecting this at all when I saw it. So it's a 2 CP standard unit, so multi-playable FFTA backup. It has X, so cost of your choice, and Dull, put Black Mage into the break zone. Cast 1 summon of cost X or less from your hand without paying the cost, then return that summon to your hand after use instead of putting it in the break zone. So this lets you cast summons from any color. It puts it back into your hand, so you're paying 1 and breaking a backup, which is kind of like a 1 CP, and then you lose a feature CP producer, but you're getting 2 CP back into your hand, so that's fine. And then it's just letting you cast stuff. Like you could put a Mist Dragon in your mono ice deck, which allows you to blank people's break zones, or you can put other whatever summons you want. Even if you just cast 1 CP Zalira or Glacias off of this, you're getting the summon back. Like, I just think that that's a really, really neat effect. And it's kind of like the flashing effect that Ice gets with the, like, Une and Renoa, but it's kind of like on a summon. It's like, here's your summon back. You get to use it again. Kind of like a time. This could have been a time mage. Okay, now we're getting down to the meat of the deal.
Right, that's the real core of it. It should have been a time mage. I actually just saw this card. I didn't know this card existed till today. Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, that's a really neat effect. And just, yeah, I mean, summons are so valuable. So the fact that there's no restriction on the type or the cost, just that cast it and I'll pull it right back. And I don't believe, unless they outright cancel this effect via like the Legend Porum or something, I don't think there's anything they can do to stop that, because it never should go to the break zone, right? So it's not like it can go to the break zone, then they can dump your break zone on the stack or anything. I'm pretty sure this is just always going to come right back to your hand.
Yeah, I'm not exactly the master judge, but I believe you're right. I think this is pretty lock solid. Once it gets through, that card's coming back to your hand.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely will try this out, because getting to cast Glaciabolus more than once, or Zalira, or my favorite ice summon, which is the Opus XI Shiva, which Dole freezes 3 things. Using that is always such a swing play, and then to be like, oh, by the way, I'll be casting that again. Thanks. Like, that's really cool.
Hey, we'll see you next turn.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a counter card for ice coming up next.
More 15 love. This is Gentiana, secretly Lady Shiva, for those of you who've played 15. Or if not, I guess I just spoiled it. So she is a 3-cost, 7k forward, job messenger. Love her artwork. She was a neat character in the game, too. She has one of the most interesting abilities I've ever seen on a card. It says, the dull forwards opponent controls lose their abilities. And then she also has an action where you just dull her, and it says choose a forward and dull it. So the action ability alone is solid. Choose a forward, dull it is great. secretly, it's actually nice that it doesn't say your opponent's forwards, because on that offhand chance someone's coming at you with Bahamut 0, you can, I'm just going to dull that forward so that whole thing fizzles. So the fact, or, an Alcid, it's really good against lightning. So the fact that that's indiscriminate is great, but the fact that just the moment people are dull, they lose their abilities. So first of all, Earth wants to go against her because that way they just can complete an order. But so any attacker you have, the moment they attack, boom, they lose their abilities. That's pretty crazy. So like I'm thinking of my Thancred and Scions, or anything else that has if it had first strike or a power buff or anything, like that goes away the second it goes into attack mode. So that's gonna make it, you're gonna have to really think about it when you're fighting this card, because it's like, oh yeah, once I attack I'm losing it. I don't know. She sounds, I just don't know. I'm just not, this is another card that like, she sounds really cool. I don't know if it'll be an issue of space. Maybe she's really like maybe this card's going to be really broken. Or maybe it won't be very good at all. I'm just not sure, because I think it'll just really depend on the deck she's facing.
Because it's conditional and because it's on a forward, I don't think this will ever be broken. It's not like Halicarnassus where you play it and your opponent's forwards are blanked. And if your opponent's forwards are buffed by something like a booster, by wall, by some sort of external ability, they're going to keep their boost.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just going to be things like Amaro that we looked at in the last video that has all these inherent abilities, that those will be gone. They won't be on the card anymore. It's going to... What's really great is that all of your removal in ice targets dull forwards. And lots of forwards have enter the break zone abilities, and those are all going to be turned off. When you have a chance for your removal to hit it, that's when the abilities are going to be off. So it works really well in that way. So I think it's going to see some play. It's a 3 CP forward, so we can bring it back with Scholar. I think that it could be a very good one of in a lot of ice decks.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see her, because again, in my mind, against the right deck, she'll just like shut it down entirely. But against other stuff, maybe she won't even do anything. So she'll be a fun one to watch. Yeah.
Next up, we have a 1 CP summon, which is Shiva. It's an EX Burst, category FFTA. It reads, EX Burst, choose 1 dull forward, deal 6,000 damage. If your opponent has received 5 points of damage or more, deal it 9,000 damage instead. This is pretty tricky to use. It's better than the Opus I Shiva, but not by much. I think that there's just too many good ice summons, like Glacia and Zalira, to put this in your deck, so I'm probably not going to play it.
That's interesting you said that, because the people in my group were higher on this. One of them thought it was just so strong because, for 1 CP, you can do just a 6k blow up. And obviously if you're a 5, it's 9. So in a Shiva deck, it works well with the Opus X Shiva that, you want to like cast in previous Shivas beforehand. And it's a burst, that's nice. However, you do bring up a good point that, we have that Zalira for 1 CP that you can just outright break something. Now, granted, it's locked by prime numbers, but still, I don't know. I was actually a bit higher on this one, but now that you said that, I wonder if maybe we're overrating it.
Yeah, interesting. I just don't think 6k is going to kill very much. So it needs to be 1k higher for it to be any good. But then obviously that's way too powerful. So
yeah,
I think it's just locked out.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I will say Ice doesn't have a whole lot of great EX Burst summons. So I will say I think this is a solid summon for an EX Burst in Ice.
Yeah.
Because most of the Ice stuff, it doesn't have, like Glacia, Zalira, Shiva, it has to be hard cast, so.
Excuse me. Okay.
Are you coming down with a cold?
Oh, no, I think I'm just drinking too much coffee and it's getting my throat a little bit. Okay, let's move on to the next card.
You know what you need is a trip to the casino. And you know who can help you out with that? Our good buddy Setzer here. He's a gambler. He is a 4-cost 8k forward. Final Fantasy VI, of course. Really like this artwork. I love the pose he has where he's holding the card. He looks great. So, when Setzer enters the field, each player randomly discards 1 card from their hand. Then, any player who discards a Category 6 card gets to draw 1 card. Now he has a special ability called Slots. You pay 1 Setzer, and then you dull him. Reveal the top card of your deck. If the revealed card's CP cost is an odd number, break all the dull forwards opponent controls. If the revealed card's CP cost is an even number, activate all characters other than Setzer you control, and draw 2 cards. So we'll get to slots in a second. His first effect. His first effect is basically always going to favor the person who played him, unless you just happen to be having a 6 matchup, mirror match. Because most likely, even if you have to discard, you will always, get to draw your card back. And you can always play him when you have an empty hand, too, and that opponent discards, and then you get to draw a card. So I like him for that already. Slots is just so cool. Mm-hmm. Setzer was always one of my favorite characters in 6. And even though the slots generally don't always go off so great, like, they're just fun to use. They just really are. And so I like that this slots, it's unless they have no dull forwards, in which case I don't know why you would use it, this is always going to do something at least. That's what feels good about this, is there's no mode of this where it's like, oh, wow, I just totally ruined myself. Activating all your characters and drawing 2, that's great, especially in Ice. Ice doesn't have reactivation. Like, this gives Ice reactivation. That's nutty. Or, again, a Zalira effect. Like, that's cool. Yeah, he's such a neat little card. Setzer, they must really like him because his backup version is great. His forward version is great. This forward version is great, yeah. So you have no end of good Setzers to pick from if you're looking for this 6 character.
They just keep... They obviously love him as a character. And the ability's very fair because you need to have him out. He has to survive a turn. You have to have another Setzer in your hand. And how many Setzers are you actually going to be running? Like, or how many times can you actually do slots? And you have no idea what it's going to happen because it's random unless you're using something like Light Yuna, but then there's another layer of setup. So is slots going to be this new board clearing crazy ability? No, it's just going to be super fun to do. So that being said, you got to throw all 9 Setzers into your ice deck so that you can just be playing slots every turn.
Exactly, and get a noise on your cell phone that goes.
Yeah, and then Gentiana is just like tapping things so that you can keep using slots, and you're laughing. Nothing has abilities, and it's all it's gonna be great.
I am gonna do that. All 9 Setzers in the deck. That sounds great.
Okay, let's move on to our ice counter monster. This is Dandrine, which sounds kind of like a shampoo that it counters dandruff or something. But
maybe he's worth it. Maybe it's Dandrine.
It's a 1 CP multiplayable ice monster. It's a job demon. When an ice character other than Dandrine enters your field, place 1 monster counter on Dandrine. So his non-counter ability is just to dull a forward, which is fine. And then his 3 counter ability is to choose up to 2 forwards, dull, and freeze them, which is good. So again, we just don't know how to evaluate this yet, and I don't know if it's going to be worth it for the dull freeze. But I think we'll have to try it in Mono Ice because Mono Ice does have some monster synergy with searching and with the recurring, so it could be worth testing.
First time I saw him in 9, I always thought his design was really cool. I just like this little god demon hanging out inside a book, and he looks so sad here. This is probably one of my favorite of these monsters, just because 1 CP dull something, it's a very solid effect. So I think he's one of the ones that, like, for the instant effect, if you have to, he's got one of the better ones. And then, of course, the dull freeze is great, but beyond that, everything else you said is true. We'll just have to see.
Yeah. Okay, we've got another legend.
Oh, it's Bart Andalus. It's that crazy body. Okay, so Bart Andalus is a 4-cost, 8K forward, Job Val C, category 13. And when Bart Andalus enters the field, choose up to 2 forwards opponent controls. Deal each of them damage equal to its power minus 2,000. At the end of each of your opponent's turns, dull and freeze all the active backups opponents control. So that last effect is very strong. It's definitely going to want to encourage your opponent to just play out their CP. Like, if they have an effect, like a backup they want to leave up, which counters something like a Lail or something, they're not going to want to do that because it's going to be useless. They're going to lose it. So it's going to encourage them to definitely play everything out. His first effect, what I like about it is that, like is the wrong word. What's interesting about it is that it doesn't have to be dull forwards, which is a thing for Ice. I actually don't like that because I think Ice should have to hit dull forwards, but whatever. So obviously you're going to want to combo this, but then again, everything Ice can do that pings has to be dull, so I almost feel like you want it to be dull, unless you're doing some kind of push play, like some kind of play where you're going to then push in with your Porum, and you know that if they block, they're going to lose whatever that forward is. I don't know. Some people think this card's incredible. I'm kind of just, I don't know. I don't think he's as good as he reads. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe he'll be incredible. But again, it almost feels like his effect should say dull because everything in ice pings a dull forward. So if you just set their power, or if you do damage -2, you're not going to be able to ping them off unless they already are dull. I don't know. What do you think about this one, Alex?
I think that first ability is going to be harder to combo off than people might imagine. It's a lot of setup. Like, you have to have the cards in order to do it. But this is searchable, so that helps as a 13 card.
Yeah.
I think that second ability is really crazy. I think that can quickly get out of hand. If your opponent's not able to use all of their CP, then they're going to be pretty choked about it. So I think this card is certainly very, very powerful. And, I think it's going to fit really well in your Fire Ice Samurai deck.
Yeah, that's
you
a good
just
point.
attack with your Cyan, and then you drop your Bart Andalus, and then boom, 2 things dead.
Yeah, maybe really his place instead of like just ice is really in combined elements, or even like ice wind. Like you hit a Valafor on the board, hit Bart Andalus, boom, they're dead just from that. Or like you said, the Samurai, you swing anything that does a minor amount of board damage, hell, even a Dancer, like you could then finish him off. So I think that would be the key to him, is combining him with those other elements. Because again, just in ice, I don't think he's going to be enough on his own.
Yeah, you've got a lot of different board clear type things. Lightning has the 1 CP Raiden, I think, and then Wind got a new summon that helps out with this. You've got Dancer, you've got Pinello, and then Fire has the Royal Ripeness, which is clearly going to be huge with this card. So
I will say what this guy is the king of. If you've ever played those games where you've got all 5 backups and you're like top decking and you brick into the 2 backups you've already got down, so you literally can't do anything. Oh, that's gonna feel bad because now you're gonna lose all your backups.
And you look at this guy's card art and he's just sneering at you. Like he knows what he's done, and that's unforgivable.
That crazy body.
We've got a 4 CP Fencer. This is a 7k forward standard unit FFTA multiplayable. When Fencer enters the field, choose 1 forward your opponent controls. If the cost to play Fencer was paid with CP of 2 or more different elements, stall and freeze it. I really don't like this card. It's just one of those, again, it's a pack filler limited card that will be really good in limited, but it's just got zero reason to see play because you have Genesis in constructed, but you also have Time Mage, which was a 3 CP version of Genesis that we saw a little while ago. Like there's just better ways to do this. So this is purely a limited card in my eyes.
You said it all.
Okay, how about Mute?
Mute is a 2 CP backup job prince from FFTA. Mute has the ability pay 1 ice, dull, and put Mute into the break zone. Dull and freeze all the backups opponent controls. You can only use this ability during your turn and if your opponent controls 5 or more backups. This isn't my type of card at all. I think this card is really lame. First of all, you can only use this ability on your turn, and then they have to have 5 backups. And there's plenty of games out there that people don't get to 5 backups, whether it's because they're breaking them for effects or they're just focusing on their forwards. 5 backups isn't always a thing. So there's a chance you'll never even have the opportunity to use this card. The other thing, too, is any effect like this that attacks their backups, it's going to go on the stack, which means they can respond. Yes, they will still be frozen, so you will still get that aspect, but they have the chance to at least get the CP out of them for a turn. So just, I don't know. This card does not read well to me at all.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not going to be a lot of things they're going to do with that CP generally. They might have something to cast, but if anything, you're making them cast at the wrong time. This card can really shut down your opponent at the end of the game, which is nice. If you play it, I wonder if there's going to be people that won't go to their 5th backup because you played it. And if that's the case, you've actually made them way less efficient, because going to 5 backups helps you play a lot of different cards. If someone doesn't go to 5 backups because you have this out, then Mute's already worth the play because you've stopped them. So I actually kind of like that. People will go to 5 backups because you need to, and then you'll be able to use it. that's, again, this is in specific matchups, so this is going to be against things like Weewa and sometimes like Rampier or like a lot of the meta decks do go to 5 backups, but not everything will. So there will be dead matchups, but that's the same of a lot of cards. So I'm optimistic about this guy. He is a Prince as well, which is really good. I think that there's some Prince synergy, and if there isn't, then it's just a relevant job, I would imagine, because we're gonna get more Princes throughout the game.
Put a question mark by this guy. This will be a fun one to see if I was right that he wasn't very good, or if Alex was right that he's much better than I tried. So
yeah, we'll talk about it at the end of the set, I'm sure. Next up we have Yazoo, which is a 2 CP ice forward job remnant, category 7. He has 5,000 power. When Yazoo enters the field, choose one character your opponent controls, dull it. When he's put to the field to the break zone, then choose one character your opponent controls, dull, and freeze it. So that exit ability is just solid. It's something that we've seen before. The enter the field ability is also fine, but if you have the Qaddafi that we talked about out, it actually reads, when Yazoo enters the field, choose one character your opponent controls, dull, and freeze it. So that's dull and freeze their backup, dull and freeze their forward, dull and freeze their monster, whatever it is, you can dull and freeze it. So, this guy's going to depend on how good the remnants are, and I think that's just something that remains to be seen.
I think this is another example of the 7 characters getting overtuned. I mean, 2 CP, 5K is fine, and at the very worst, dull a character. That's solid for 2 CP, and then again, dull freeze on exit. So that's even without Qaddafi out there, just on his own. Dull something on entry, dull freeze on exit. For 2 CP, I think that's a lot of value, so I think this card's really good.
Yep. Okay, and then we've got another one of our FFCC backups.
Yuke. Yuke is multi-playable. He's 3 cost backup, standard unit. When Yuke enters the field, turn over 1 card at a time from the top of your deck until a wind or earth card is revealed. Add it to your hand. Then shuffle the other cards and return them to the bottom of your deck. Similar to the fire version of this, which was the Lilty, this will go well in multi-element decks. And what's nice is that we already know Ice plays well with both earth and wind. So he's kind of already set up for that. I wasn't too high on the fire one, but Alex kind of changed my mind on it. So, it's a tutor. It's going to get you a card regardless. So that feels pretty good. So yeah, I'm kind of coming around on these the more I think about them. I don't know how much I would use them personally, but I can definitely see their potential.
I think this is the best one because it searches earth, and ice earth with like 6 earth cards is actually pretty common. Like that's ice earth running 3 Shantoto, 3 Flan, and like maybe one other earth card is actually, that's a deck. That's a meta deck. So this searches one of those earth cards and can help you color fix or find something to play an earth card with, and I think that makes it pretty relevant. So I think it's a good one. Okay, and then we have Laws. Is this me or is this you?
This is you.
Okay. So Laws is Job Remnant, Final Fantasy VII. He is a 7k for 3 cost, which is great. The Job Remnant forwards other than Laws you control gain 2,000 power, okay? And then when he's put into the field to the break zone, your opponent discards 1 card. This is what you were just talking about. They gave him extra text. He is already fine. I would have played him.
Yeah. Without
that first line of text. I think he would have been fine because I play Galvis for the same reason, that he can make your opponent discard on exit, and that makes him kind of a pseudo 1 CP forward. It makes your opponent feel bad about using removal, and then this guy can also be discarded for CP. So I wouldn't be surprised if this maybe sees play in non-remnant decks, although it's certainly much better in remnant decks, and he powers up the Dark Qaddafi as well. So I'm pretty stoked about this guy.
Yeah, he's strong. Just like I said earlier, these 7 cards, just, you get that little extra. And like you said with Galdes, like discarding from hand because of a forward dying feels terrible, because chances are you already had to do something to get rid of that forward, whether it was you had to sacrifice one of your own effects or a summon or a forward or whatever. So then you lose a card on top of that. It always feels really bad.
Yeah, it's like, hey, pay two extra for your removal.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the starter cards.
All right, first we have a card that's made a lot of waves already. Kate Sith from Final Fantasy VII, 2 CP, backup, Job Spy. When Kate Sith enters the field, your opponent reveals their hand. you may select one card in their hand other than a backup. If you do so, remove it from the game, and your opponent draws one card. A couple other people have said this, so I'll just echo their thoughts that this is Zidane done right. This is what the win Zidane should be, because everyone always complains it's so stupid they can rip a backup out and ruin your curve. So this specifically can't target a backup, and it removes that card from game, which is pretty ridiculous. Because if you have any kind of recursion, like, you now have no chance to get that back. So as a little token benefit, your opponent then gets to draw a card. So for a card that's going to look at your hand and pluck something out and throw it out of the game entirely, I'm so glad it lets you draw as well. This card feels like they actually thought about it and designed it. Okay, well, let's give it a good effect, but let's also not make it so obnoxious for your opponent to have to deal with it. This card is very good, and it's also nice to see Kate Sith get a great card, that a lot of times that character hasn't been represented well.
Yeah, and I think that it's just, you said it all. That's what I wrote in my Final Fantasy VII starter article, that it was the proper way to do this selected discard. I love the idea of hitting a Rampier or a Rain or a 9 CP Shantoto, and it's removed from the game. They can draw another card, but it's not going to be, it could be, but it's likely not going to be another Rain. So you really can... Oh, sorry, you can't take a Rampier. That's my mistake. It can't be a backup, but it can be a Shantoto and it can be a Rain, and that's very, very important. And it means that I'm likely going to be playing this as the 2 of or more in my Ice decks. It's also searchable on EX Burst and Ice Lightning with the
Reeve.
The Reeve backup, which is pretty nice as well. So that's kind of a cool little interaction to get your color fix in Ice Lightning if you decide to play Ice Lightning 7 or something along those lines.
Yeah. Also, really like the artwork. He looks so cheerful here and on his big mog. For me, Kate Sith has always been the most forgettable character in 7. It's just such a strange character in the game.
He is, yeah.
But this art is really good, and it represents its cheerfulness quite well.
Next up, we have Don Corneo, and I'm not going to lie to you, this is not my type of card. I struggle with it because I'm so worried. But I've already seen it been used to really great effect. Not only with its abilities in a goal-best deck, but also in its ability to be a 2 CP Ice Category 7 forward that Cloud, the starter Cloud, can then turn into a 3-cost forward. So he's got a lot of potential in a lot of different decks, and obviously those second 2 abilities are quite powerful.
Did you want to read them?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So it's Don Corneo. Job Boss, which is neat, Category 7. So put the top 2 cards of your deck to the break zone, choose one forward, dull it, and you have to dull Don Corneo as well. Put the top 7 cards of your deck into the break zone, and choose one dull forward and break it. Put the top 15 cards of your deck into the break zone, choose one forward. You gain control of it for as long as Don Corneo is on the field. And that's so risky because he's a 2 CP 5k, so... kind of an interesting ability. It's more of a finisher than like a long-term plan.
I know there's going to be some matches out there where someone's going to win the game with that effect, and they'll be like, dude, this card's so cool. But like you said, this is not me at all. I'm sorry. I am not dumping 15 cards from my deck for something that could be canceled at a moment. Like, no thanks. Cool for the swing plays out there if you can get them, but yeah. In general, I'm not a big fan of dumping cards off your deck, period. Like, it better be a damn good thing if I'm going to do that. And yeah, gaining control of forward is great. And because these are all action abilities, none of these have to be done on your turn. So, like, they can go to combat and you can be like, cool, bloop, I'm going to block with that guy that you just, that you weren't expecting to attack with.
That's pretty good, yeah.
I mean, still, though, you're paying a hell of a price for that. So, yeah, not interested.
Yeah, and one thing from the FAQ is that you can't use any of the abilities if you don't have that many cards in your deck. So you can't use the 15 one, obviously, if you don't have 15 cards in your deck. But that's going to be it for Ice, and I think this is something that we're going to say about most of the elements, but again, this is a powerful set. Would you agree with that? It's a pretty powerful set?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think Ice got a lot of cool cards. I like both the legends. They're not overpowered things that are just going to win on their own, but they're both really neat. The rest of the cards, there's some really interesting things, like that Black Mage backup is super interesting.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
The Black Waltz and the Setzer and Idolus and
Gentiana.
ISO got some really neat stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, I think it's a good set for Ice, so I think a lot of Ice players are going to be pretty happy.
Yeah. Which is cool, because I felt like Opus X wasn't really so great for Ice, so I feel like this one kind of buffed it up a bit more.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Okay, well, thank you so much for tuning in. That's been it for the Opus XI Ice review, and we're going to be moving on to Wind next, so we'll see you soon enough. This is Alex Scott.
And Travis Pfeifer.
See you next time. Thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe to support us further, and you can read the Mysidia Post articles at themysidiapost.com. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to support us more. And if you need FFTCG singles, then look no further than Cards That You Release. They've got great deals and prices. Check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank FF Decks for creating the best website for creating your Final Fantasy trading card game decks. They've also got a Patreon, so make sure you go check them out. They work so hard for the community, so let's pay them back. See you next time.